In a galaxy where death was currency and blood, the only language spoken across 1,000,000 worlds, the Imperium of Man believed it had perfected the art of killing. The Officio Assassinorum had existed for 10,000 years, cataloging every method of murder known to humanity. Silent death, loud death, death that looked like accident, death that served as message. They were wrong. The body was discovered at dawn on Hive Praxis, though dawn was a relative term on a world where the sun had not pierced the smog layer in 3 centuries. Planetary Governor Thaddeus Crine lay in his fortified bedchamber, surrounded by 3 circles of security that should have been impenetrable. Void-shielded walls, gene-locked doors, a full squad of Tempestus scions stationed outside. All worthless. Medikey Examiner Vela Thorne approached the corpse with professional detachment, born from 40 years of cataloging death in service to the Administratum. She had seen everything. Bomb victims, poison deaths, assassinations both crude and sophisticated. But this made her hands shake as she activated her data slate. Single entry wound, she reported to the Arbite's commander standing behind her. Penetrated the skull at the base of the cerebellum. Death was instantaneous. No other injuries. No signs of struggle. How did the killer breach security? Commander Drax demanded, his augmetic eye whirring as it scanned the sealed chamber. Vela gestured at the body. That is not the question you should be asking, Commander. The question is what kind of weapon leaves a wound channel this precise? She magnified the scan on her slate. Look. Perfect circular entry, no burn marks, no explosive residue. This was not a las weapon, not a bolt round, not any Imperial weapon I recognize. Drax leaned closer, his jaw tightening. Xenos technology? I do not know, but there is something else. Vela pointed to the governor's chest, where something had been carved into the flesh with surgical precision, a single word in Gothic script. What does that mean? Drax asked, pulling out his data slate to cross-reference the term with Imperial records. Unknown etymology, Vela replied, her voice hollow. It is not Low Gothic, not High Gothic, not any dialect in the Administratum database. They both stood in silence, staring at the impossible crime scene. Outside, Hive Praxis continued its endless cycle of industrial production. Billions of souls grinding themselves to dust in manufactorums and refineries, unaware that something new had entered their universe. Something that killed with precision they could not comprehend. 300 kilometers away, in the Underhive where light was a luxury and law a distant memory, a man walked through the shadows. His suit was black, immaculate despite the grime that covered everything in this forsaken level. His hair was dark, slightly too long, framing a face that was neither young nor old. Just tired. Infinitely tired. Blood covered his hands, still wet, still warm. John Wick stopped at a rusted Vox terminal and inserted a coin. Not Imperial currency. Something else. Gold. Stamped with an unfamiliar symbol. He waited, but the terminal remained dead. Of course, this universe did not have the Continental. Did not have the High Table. Did not have any of the infrastructure he had spent his entire life navigating. He was alone. Behind him, a gang of hivers emerged from the darkness. 20 of them, armed with crude stub pistols and improvised blades. They saw an outsider, someone who did not belong. Easy prey in a realm where strength was the only law that mattered. "You lost, off-worlder?" their leader called out. A scarred giant with augmetic arms that ended in industrial claws. John turned slowly, his movements economical, professional. He studied them with dark eyes that held no fear, no anger, just calculation. "I'm looking for a way back," he said. his voice carrying a strange accent none of them recognized. American, a word that meant nothing in the imperium of man. The gang laughed. The leader stepped forward, his claws clicking together. Only way out of the Underhive is death, stranger, and we are very good at providing that service. John said nothing. His hand moved to his jacket, and the gang tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, he produced a small hollow device. Not imperial technology, something sleeker, more elegant. He activated it, and a three-dimensional image appeared in the air. A dog, brown and white, looking at the camera with soulful eyes. I had a dog, John said quietly, still staring at the image. She was the last thing I had from my wife, the last thing I loved. The gang leader frowned, confused by this strange confession. What does that have to do with anything? Everything, John replied, deactivating the image. He looked up at them, and something in his eyes made even these hardened Underhive killers take an involuntary step back. You see, I retired, left that life behind. Found peace. Found something worth living for instead of killing for. Then someone took it from me. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. And I did what I always do. I went to work. What happened next would be reported differently by the three survivors. But all accounts agreed on the essential details. The stranger moved like water, like smoke, like death given human form. He had no visible weapon, but bodies started dropping. Necks broken with clinical precision, throats crushed with calculated force. The gang's crude firearms discharged wildly, hitting everything except their target. In 17 seconds, 20 men became 3. The survivors ran, screaming into the Underhive darkness about the demon in the black suit, about the monster with empty eyes who killed like breathing. John Wick stood alone again, surrounded by corpses. He looked down at his hands, now covered with more blood. Not the first blood they had spilled in this universe. Would not be the last. He had killed the planetary governor because the man had information about dimensional rifts, about warp breaches, about ways to leave this nightmare reality and return home. The governor had refused to share that information, so John had made him. Then he had taken what he needed from the corpse's personal data vaults and left the body as a message, not to the Imperium, to himself. A reminder that even here, even in this hell of eternal war, his old skills remained sharp. The word carved into the governor's chest had been deliberate. Excommunicado, the status that had sent him to this universe in the first place. John walked deeper into the Underhive, leaving the bodies behind. Somewhere above him, in the hive spires where the wealthy and powerful dwelled, he knew they would be investigating the governor's death. They would be confused, frightened, angry. Good. Fear was universal, in his universe or this one, and fear made people make mistakes. He needed them to make mistakes. 1,500 kilometers above the hive, on orbital defense platform Gamma 7, Inquisitor Kayla Voss watched the pict feed from the governor's bedchamber for the 7th time. She had been summoned from the neighboring system the moment the body was discovered, her authority under the Ordo Hereticus superseding all local jurisdiction. Beside her stood Master Assassin Severus, Caney of the Officio Assassinorum, his face hidden behind the ornate mask that marked him as one of the Imperium's most lethal operatives. He had killed 347 targets across a century of service. Princes and paupers, heretics and xenos, each death a perfect execution of duty. Your assessment? Voss asked, her augmetic eye glowing faintly as it processed data streams. Professional, Caney replied, his voice flat, emotionless. Extraordinarily professional. The wound placement suggests intimate knowledge of human anatomy. The lack of secondary injuries indicates perfect control. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Could this be one of ours? A rogue operative? No. The answer was immediate, certain. Our methods are documented, catalogued. This technique is unknown to the Officio Assassinorum, and that word carved into the flesh. It troubles me. Why? Because it suggests an organization, a code, a system of rules that operates outside imperial law. And if such an organization exists, we should have encountered it before. Voss turned to face him, her scarred features hardening. What if it does not exist in our universe? Caney was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. The rift. The rift, Voss confirmed. 3 days ago, astropaths detected a dimensional breach in the underhive. Brief, localized. Unlike any warp signature on record, it closed almost immediately, but not before something came through. And you believe this assassin is what emerged? I believe we are dealing with something unprecedented, Master Kane. A killer from beyond our reality, operating under rules we do not understand. Which makes him more dangerous than any heretic or Xenos we have faced. She pulled up additional pict feeds on the holo display. Security footage from various locations throughout the hive. Each showed the same figure. Black suit. Dark hair. Moving with purpose through crowds that instinctively parted for him. In some frames, bodies lay in his wake. In others, he simply walked, a ghost passing through their world. He has killed 14 people in 3 days, Voss continued, all of them connected to the Administratum's Dimensional Research Division. He is hunting for something, information, a way to return home, perhaps. Then we have leverage, Caney observed. We offer him what he seeks in exchange for service. Or we eliminate him before he becomes a greater threat, Voss countered. A man this skilled, this focused, could destabilize entire sectors if left unchecked. Your orders, Inquisitor? Voss studied the frozen image on the display. The man's face showed no emotion, no fear, no doubt. Just the cold certainty of someone who had walked this path 1,000 times before. Deploy a Vindicare, she ordered. Your best. I want this outsider tested. If he can be killed, kill him. If he cannot, we need to understand why. Caney nodded and activated his wrist-mounted Vox. This is Master Assassin Caney. Authorization Umbra 7. Deploy Vindicare Operative Zariel to Hive Praxis. Target is Code Crimson. Rules of engagement are Terminus Absolute. Across the orbital platform, in a chamber sealed with gene locks and psi wards, a figure stirred. Vindicare Temple Assassin Zariel had been in meditation, his mind and body in perfect synchronization, as he maintained the killing edge that defined his existence. The Vox message interrupted that meditation, and he rose with fluid grace. His weapon was already prepared. The Exodus rifle, a masterwork of assassination technology, capable of placing a round through a target's eye from 3 kilometers away. In 40 years of service, Zariel had never missed, never failed. He did not intend to start now. The assassin gathered his equipment with ritualistic precision. Each piece had been blessed by tech priests, each component maintained in perfect condition. He loaded specialized ammunition into the rifle's magazine, rounds designed to penetrate void shields and ceramite armor, rounds that could kill space marines, surely more than adequate for one man in a suit. Within the hour, Zariel had deployed to the hive via drop pod, his insertion so precise that he landed on a spire overlooking the sector where the target was last sighted. He set up his firing position with practiced efficiency, the rifle's scope interfacing with his augmented nervous system. Through the scope, the hive became a maze of sight lines and firing solutions. Zariel's mind cataloged targets automatically. Gang members, Arbites patrols, civilians. None mattered. Only the mark. He waited. Patience was the Vindicator's greatest weapon. He had once maintained a firing position for 63 days, motionless, waiting for the perfect shot. This would require far less. 4 hours after nightfall, the target appeared, walking through a market sector 3 kilometers from Zariel's position, moving with that same purposeful stride. The assassin's finger moved to the trigger, his breathing slowing to nothing. Wind speed calculated, atmospheric density measured, trajectory plotted. Perfect shot. Perfect kill. He fired. The Exodus round left the barrel at hypersonic velocity, crossing 3 kilometers in less than a second. It should have struck the target in the base of the skull, exactly as the wound on the governor's body. Death instantaneous. Mission complete. John Wick moved, not before the shot, not in reaction to the sound. He moved in the exact moment the round would have struck, his body shifting 3 inches to the left in a motion that looked like a natural part of his stride. The round passed through empty air and detonated against a hab-block wall behind him. Zariel felt something he had not experienced in decades: confusion, followed immediately by professional recalculation. The target had not dodged the shot, could not have dodged the shot. No human reflexes were fast enough, yet somehow, impossibly, he had not been where the bullet expected him to be. Coincidence. Had to be coincidence. Zariel chambered another round and fired again, this time aiming for the center of mass, impossible to dodge through random movement. John Wick turned a corner. The round struck a support pillar where his chest had been a microsecond before. Impossible, Zariel whispered, his voice carrying the first trace of emotion in years. He fired a 3rd time. 4th. 5th. Each shot perfect. Each trajectory calculated with transhuman precision. Each one missing by inches as the target moved through the crowded market like water flowing around stones. Then John Wick stopped walking. He turned and looked directly up at Zariel's position, 3 kilometers away, hidden in shadow and camouflage that should have been undetectable. Their eyes met across the impossible distance, and John Wick smiled, not with humor, not with malice, just the cold acknowledgement of one professional recognizing another. Then he vanished into the crowd, leaving Zariel alone with the unprecedented reality of failure. On the orbital platform, Inquisitor Voss received the report with growing dread. Master Caney stood beside her, his posture unchanged, but tension visible in the set of his shoulders. Zariel missed, Voss stated flatly, reading the data stream. 5 times. Our best Vindicare missed 5 times against a man walking through a market. Not missed, Caney corrected quietly. Was evaded. There is a difference. How is that possible? I do not know, but I know what it means. Caney turned to face her fully. We are not dealing with a man, Inquisitor. We are dealing with something that has transcended human limitation through pure skill and experience. A weapon shaped by forces we do not understand. Then we use greater force, Voss decided. Deploy a full kill team. Tempestuous science, heavy weapons, overwhelming firepower. That will not work. Why not? Because I have studied the Pict feats, analyzed his movement patterns. This man does not fight like Imperial soldiers fight. He does not seek glory or martyrdom. He seeks efficiency. Every kill serves a purpose. Every action has a reason. Caney paused. He is what we train our operatives to become. But he achieved it without our methods, without our conditioning, through nothing but experience and will. So what do you recommend? I recommend we offer him what he wants. Information about the rift, assistance in returning home, in exchange for service. And if he refuses? Caney was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke words that chilled even the Inquisitor's augmented heart. then the Imperium has created an enemy it cannot kill. And that is the most dangerous thing in any universe. In the Underhive, John Wick sat in an abandoned hab unit, cleaning blood from his hands with a rag that had once been white. Around him lay the tools of his trade, weapons taken from the bodies of those who had tried to kill him, ammunition salvaged from Imperial armories, data slates stolen from administratum officials. He was adapting, learning the rules of this new universe, understanding its hierarchies and power structures, finding the weaknesses in systems designed to be absolute. On the table before him lay a small holoprojector, the image of his dog frozen in the air, a reminder of what he had lost, what he was fighting to return to. "I'm coming home," he whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of his dead wife, to the memory of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. But first he had work to do. The Imperium wanted to kill him, wanted to use him, wanted to understand him. He would give them none of those things. Because John Wick was not a hero, was not a villain, was not a pawn in someone else's game. He was just a man who wanted to go home, and he would kill anyone who stood in his way, even if that meant going through the entire Imperium of man. The Arbites Precinct House in Sector 47 had stood for 3 centuries, a fortress of imperial law in an ocean of criminal chaos. Its walls were reinforced rockcrete, 2 meters thick. Its doors were gene-locked ceramite, proof against breaching charges and power weapons. Inside, 300 Arbites maintained order through violence and intimidation, the only language the Underhive understood. None of it mattered. Judge Marshal Cato Hearn received the distress call at 400 hours. One of his patrol squads had gone silent during a routine sweep of the commercial district. Not unusual. Communications in the Underhive were unreliable at best. But when the backup squad also failed to report, Hearn deployed personally with 50 Arbites in full riot gear. They found the bodies in an alley behind a corpse starch processing facility. 12 Arbites, all dead, not killed in a firefight, not overwhelmed by numbers, executed with clinical precision. "Throne of Terra," whispered Arbitrator Vex, kneeling beside one of the corpses. "Look at the wounds." Each Arbites had been killed differently, but with the same mechanical efficiency. Throats crushed, necks broken at precise angles. One had been shot with his own shotgun, the weapon now lying useless beside the body. Another had been killed with a combat knife, his own blade buried in his eye socket with surgical accuracy. This was not a gang, Hearn observed, his augmetic eye recording every detail. Gangs fight messy. They use overwhelming firepower. They leave evidence of struggle. "Then what did this?" Vex asked, genuine fear entering his voice for the first time in 20 years of service. "Something that knows how we think, how we move, how we fight." Hearn pulled up the last few seconds of pict feed from one Arbite's helmet recorder. The image was grainy, distorted, but showed a figure in black moving through their formation like a ghost. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just perfect, terrible efficiency. The figure turned toward the camera for just a moment, and Hearn froze the image. A man's face, dark eyes, expression utterly neutral, not angry, not afraid, just focused. "I want this man found," Hearn commanded, transmitting the image to every Arbitz in the sector. "Maximum force authorized. Shoot on sight. No arrests, no questions, just elimination. Marshal, we don't even know who he is or what he wants. I don't care. 12 of our brothers are dead, Arbitrator. That is all I need to know." Within the hour, every Arbite's patrol in the Underhive carried the stranger's image. Rewards were posted. Informants were activated. The full machinery of Imperial law enforcement pivoted toward finding one man. They found him 3 hours later. Or rather, he let them find him. John Wick stood in the middle of an abandoned warehouse, surrounded by crates stamped with Imperial Aquilas and Administratum seals. He had been waiting, knew they would come, had chosen this ground deliberately. 50 Arbites entered through every entrance simultaneously, their movements coordinated through Vox networks. They formed a perfect kill box, weapons raised, every angle covered. Standard Imperial tactical doctrine, overwhelming force. No escape. Judge Marshal Hearn stepped forward, his voice amplified through his helmet's external speakers. You are surrounded, on your knees, hands behind your head. You have 3 seconds to comply. John looked at him with those same dark, empty eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried that strange accent none of them could place. Calm, professional, tired. I do not want to kill you. 1, I am not your enemy. 2, but I will not stop. 3, open fire! 50 weapons discharged simultaneously. Shotguns, stub pistols. A few last carbines taken from guard surplus. The warehouse filled with smoke and sound and fury. When the barrage stopped, the smoke began to clear. John Wick wasn't where he had been standing. Spread out, Hearn commanded, his training overriding his confusion. Pattern Delta. Cover every... The nearest Arbitz dropped, his neck broken before his finger could tighten on the trigger. John moved behind the next, using the man's body as a shield, while simultaneously disarming him. The shotgun fired once, taking down 2 more Arbites before John discarded it and moved again. What followed was not a battle, it was a demonstration. John flowed through the Arbites' formation like water through cracks in stone. He used their numbers against them, staying so close to one target that others could not fire without hitting their own. When he needed a weapon, he took one. When he needed cover, he created it from the bodies of the fallen. Every movement served multiple purposes. Every action led to the next with mechanical inevitability. An arbitrator swung his shock maul in a perfect arc, the weapon crackling with electrical charge. John sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and used the arbitrator's own momentum to drive him into a support pillar. The skull cracked with a sound like breaking ceramite. Another fired a shotgun at point-blank range. John turned, the blast passing centimeters from his head, and drove his palm into the shooter's nose. Bone and cartilage shattered, fragments driven directly into the brain. Instant death. Judge Marshal Hearn watched in horror as his carefully trained force was dismantled. Not defeated in battle, not overwhelmed by superior firepower, simply taken apart with mathematical precision by someone who understood violence on a level the Imperium had never catalogued. Fall back, he ordered, pride forgotten in the face of survival. All units fall back. But John was not letting them retreat. He moved to the exits, his body becoming a wall of death that none could pass. Arbites died trying, died fighting, died begging. When it was over, when the last body hit the warehouse floor, only Judge Marshal Hearn remained alive. John hadn't killed him. Had deliberately avoided him through the entire engagement. Hearn raised his bolt pistol with trembling hands, aiming at the man who stood amid the carnage without a visible scratch. "What are you?" "Retired," John replied, ejecting a spent magazine from a stolen stub pistol. "Or I was. You just killed 50 Imperial law enforcement officers." I told them I did not want to. They did not listen. "The Imperium will hunt you. Every Arbitz, every Guard regiment, every Inquisitor in the sector." "I know." John reloaded the pistol with a magazine from a dead arbitrator's belt. The action was so smooth, so automatic, that it looked like breathing. "But I need information, and you are going to give it to me." "I will tell you nothing, heretic." John studied him with those dead eyes. You think I am a heretic? I am not. I have no ideology. No faith, no cause. I just want to go home. And you have access to administratum databases that contain information about the dimensional rift that brought me here. If I help you, I am a traitor to the Imperium. If you do not help me, you are dead. Hearn laughed, a broken sound. Death is preferable to betraying the Emperor. Is it? John moved closer, his movements unhurried, deliberate. Because I have killed a lot of people who believed that. Right up until the moment they broke. Everyone breaks eventually, Marshal. The only question is how much pain you want to experience first. For the first time in his 30 years of service, Judge Marshal Cato Hearn felt genuine, primal fear. Not fear of death, fear of what this empty-eyed stranger might do before allowing him to die. The administratum complex, Hearn whispered, his will crumbling like wet paper. Sub-level 94, the Dimensional Research Division. All data on warp anomalies is stored there. Security? Gene locks, servitor guards, automated defense systems. It is impossible to breach. John nodded, satisfied. Then he shot Hearn through the leg, the round shattering the femur. The Marshal collapsed, screaming. That is for your men, John said quietly. You will live. You will report what happened here. You will tell them I am coming. Why would you warn them? Because I want them afraid. Fear makes people predictable, and predictable people make mistakes. John walked out of the warehouse, leaving Hearn bleeding on the floor surrounded by his dead subordinates. Behind him, he could hear the Marshal's screams turning to laughter. The broken, hysterical laughter of a man whose world had been shattered. 700 kilometers above the hive, on the bridge of the orbital platform, Inquisitor Voss watched the Pict feed from Hearn's helmet recorder. Master Caney stood beside her, his masked face unreadable. 50 Arbites, Voss said quietly. Dead in 4 minutes. 3 minutes and 42 seconds, Caney corrected. The last 18 seconds were spent talking to the Marshal. This is beyond any threat assessment we prepared for. Yes. He is not enhanced, not a space marine, not even an Astartes aspirant, just a baseline human. Yes. So how? Caney was silent for a long moment, studying the frozen image of John Wick's face. Do you know what we do at the Officio Assassinorum, Inquisitor? We take children. We break them. We rebuild them as weapons. We condition them through drugs and hypnotic programming and genetic modification. We spend decades shaping them into instruments of death. I am aware of your methods, Master Kane. This man achieved the same result through nothing but experience, through repetition, through doing the same thing over and over across years, or decades, or centuries, until it became not learned behavior, but instinct. He is what would happen if you took an assassin's skills and placed them in a human frame without our weaknesses, without our conditioning, without our limitations. Are you saying we cannot stop him? I am saying we cannot stop him the way we stop normal threats. Overwhelming force will not work. He has already demonstrated that. Superior technology will not work. He adapts too quickly. Caney turned to face her fully. But every weapon has a weakness, Inquisitor. We just need to find his. And how do we do that? We send someone who thinks like he thinks, who understands what he is. Voss frowned. You cannot mean. I do. We have one asset in the Assassinorum who operates on instinct rather than programming, who improvises rather than follows protocols, who is, in her own way, as dangerous as this outsider. The Kalidas. Specifically, Operative Zerath. She has successfully infiltrated Xeno societies, chaos cults, even an Astartes chapter during the Badab War. She is our best at becoming whatever the target needs to see. And what does this John Wick need to see? Caney considered. From the psychological profile we have built, he needs to see someone from his old life. Someone who understands his world. His rules. You want to send her in as an ally. That is dangerous, Master Kane. What if she is compromised? Then we will have learned something valuable about our opponent's capabilities. Knowledge is worth the risk. Voss did not like it, but she recognized tactical necessity when she saw it. Authorization granted. But Caney, if this fails, if he kills Xerath, we escalate to Exterminatus Protocol. I will not allow one man to destabilize an entire sector. Understood, Inquisitor. In a sealed chamber deep within the orbital platform, Kalidas assassin Xerath received her orders through direct neural upload. The mission parameters filled her consciousness, the target profile, the approach vector, the deception required. Most would have found the assignment difficult. Xerath found it fascinating. She began her transformation immediately. The polymorphine in her bloodstream responded to her will, reshaping bone and tissue. Her face elongated slightly. Cheekbones sharpened. Hair darkened and lengthened. Within 10 minutes, she no longer looked like an Imperial operative. She looked like someone from another universe entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone John Wick might trust. She studied the limited information they had on his home reality. This continental organization, the coins, the rules, the elaborate system of professional courtesy among killers. It was not so different from the Assassinorum, really, just less obviously religious. Xerath selected her wardrobe carefully. Black suit, tailored, elegant, nothing that screamed Imperial manufacture. She would approach as a messenger. An envoy from an organization that technically no longer existed in this universe, but still held power between dimensions. The performance had to be perfect. Her life depended on it. In the Underhive, John Wick was preparing for his assault on the Administratum complex when he felt it. That old, familiar sensation. The prickling at the back of his neck that said someone was watching with professional interest rather than fear or anger. He turned slowly, his hand moving inside his jacket to the stolen stub pistol holstered there. A woman stood 30 meters away, barely visible in the dim light of the Underhive's eternal twilight. Black suit, professional bearing. She held up her hands, empty, showing no weapons. Then she held up something else. A coin. Gold. Stamped with a symbol that should not exist in this universe. The Continental marker. John froze, his mind racing through possibilities. Impossible. The Continental did not exist here. Could not exist here. Unless... Mr. Wick, the woman called out, her voice carrying that same strange accent. American, like his own. The Continental sends its regards. We need to talk. Every instinct screamed trap. Every lesson learned through decades of survival said to run. But that coin, that impossible, wonderful, terrible coin, it represented hope, and hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. Who are you? John asked, his hand still on his pistol. My name is Sophia, the woman replied, using a cover identity pulled from John's own past. Someone he had known, someone he had trusted. And I am here to tell you that your excommunicado status has been complicated by your current location. She began walking toward him, movements unhurried, confident. Everything about her body language said professional, said continental, said safe. But John had not survived this long by trusting his eyes alone. Stop there, he commanded, his voice hardening. Xerath stopped, recalculating. The target was more paranoid than intelligence suggested. Good. That would make this more interesting. I'm not here to harm you, she said. I am here with an offer. From people who understand what you are, what you were, what you could be again. The Continental is gone. I made sure of that before I retired. The Continental is never gone, John. It just sleeps, waiting for someone worth waking up for. John studied her for a long moment, saw the suit, the coin, the posture, everything correct. Everything perfect. Too perfect. Prove it, he said quietly. Prove what? That you are Continental. Tell me something only someone from my world would know. Zirath hesitated, just for a microsecond. But it was enough. John's pistol was out and firing before her hand could reach her concealed weapon. The round struck center mass, exactly where a heart should be. Zirath staggered back, shocked not by the shot, but by the speed. How had he known? How had he seen through a deception that had fooled Chaos Space Marines? Then she realized. He had not seen through it with his eyes. He had felt it. The same instinct that kept him alive through countless battles had triggered, warning him of danger too subtle for conscious thought to detect. The polymorphine in her system was already repairing the damage, but her cover was blown. No point maintaining the pretense. She dropped the American accent, speaking in flat Gothic. Impressive, Mr. Wick. You have just shot an Imperial assassin. I hope you understand what that means. It means your empire is getting desperate, John replied, already moving. Sending spies instead of soldiers. Not a spy, a test, one you just passed. Zirath's form began to shift, polymorphine accelerating as she revealed her true nature, skin rippling, features melting. But the test is not over. She moved with Kalaida's speed, crossing the distance between them faster than human perception could track. Her neural shredder materialized in her hand, a weapon designed to liquefy a target's brain through harmonic resonance. John was already gone, rolling behind a support pillar as the weapon discharged. The air where he had been standing shimmered with deadly vibrations. "You cannot hide, Mr. Wick," Zirath called out, her voice now carrying multiple tones as her vocal cords shifted. "I have killed targets who could see the future, who could read minds, who could manipulate reality itself." "Good for you," John replied from somewhere in the darkness. "I just kill people." A gunshot. Zirath's shoulder exploded in a spray of polymorphine-infused blood. She staggered, impressed despite herself. He had tracked her position through sound alone, through the minute echo of her voice. This was not going to be easy. The battle that followed was unlike anything either combatant had experienced. Zirath used her polymorphine abilities to devastating effect, changing her appearance every few seconds, becoming workers, Arbites. Even briefly attempting to mimic John himself, but John had spent his entire life in a world of deception and disguise. He tracked her through pattern recognition, through the subtle tells that even polymorphine could not hide. The way weight distributed during movement, the slight delay as transformed muscles adjusted to new configurations. And he shot her. Again. And again. Each round placed with perfect precision into joints and organs, not killing shots. Kalaidas were nearly impossible to kill quickly, but disabling shots. Shots that forced her to waste energy healing instead of attacking. "Why will you not die?" Zirath snarled, her frustration bleeding through professional detachment. "Because I have work to do," John replied, his voice still maddeningly calm. "And you are in my way." He shot her through both knees in rapid succession. Zirath collapsed. Her polymorphine system overwhelmed by the constant damage. She would heal, would recover, but not quickly enough. John stood over her, his pistol aimed at her head. "Tell your Inquisitor that I am not interested in her offers, not interested in serving your Imperium. I just want to go home, and I will kill anyone who tries to stop me." "They will send the Eversor next," Zirath gasped, her body already beginning the slow process of regeneration. And Eversor do not talk. They just kill. I know, John said. I am counting on it. He shot her through the skull, not a killing shot, but enough to knock her unconscious for several hours. Then he was gone, disappearing into the underhive like smoke. When Zerath woke, she found herself alone, alive but humiliated. She activated her emergency Vox, transmitting a brief message to the orbital platform. Subject is beyond initial assessment. Recommend extreme caution with further engagement. He is not like anything we have encountered. He is not enhanced, not augmented, not blessed by any power we recognize. He is simply perfect at what he does. On the orbital platform, Inquisitor Voss received the message with growing dread. Master Caney stood beside her, his posture unchanged, but tension radiating from every line of his body. The Eversor? Voss asked quietly. Yes, Caney confirmed. But Inquisitor, I must warn you. If we deploy an Eversor in the Underhive, the collateral damage will be catastrophic. Thousands will die. Perhaps tens of thousands. Acceptable, Voss replied, her voice cold. This threat must be contained. Whatever the cost. Caney nodded and activated his secure Vox. This is Master Assassin Caney. Authorization Crimson Omega. Deploy Eversor Unit 7. Target designation John Wick. Rules of engagement are total kill. Collateral damage is authorized. Deep in the heart of the orbital platform, in a chamber sealed with gene locks and blast doors, something stirred. Eversor Temple Assassin Unit 7 had been in stasis, its chemically enhanced metabolism slowed to near death while it awaited activation. Now it woke, and it was very, very hungry. The Administrotum complex in Sector 94 had been built during the founding of Hive Praxis, 7 centuries ago. Its walls were reinforced with void shield generators, its corridors patrolled by servitors programmed to kill anything unauthorized. Its data vaults contained information so sensitive that entire sectors had been purged to protect them. John Wick walked through the main entrance at dawn, not through stealth, not through disguise. He simply walked up to the massive ceramite doors and placed a shaped charge against the gene lock mechanism. The explosion echoed through the morning air, sending alarms screaming across the sector. Inside, 300 Administratum scribes and their armed guards heard the blast and froze. This was not supposed to happen. The complex was impregnable, had been for 700 years. Scribe Supervisor Malachi activated the internal Vox, his voice quavering. Security detail to entrance. Intruder alert. Authorization Crimson. But John was already inside. The first servitor patrol rounded a corner, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Gun servitors, half human, half machine. No hesitation, no fear, just programmed murder. John shot the lead servitor through its optical sensor, blinding it. It fired wildly, its heavy bolter rounds tearing through the corridor walls. John used the chaos, moving behind the unit and placing 3 rounds into the exposed cabling at the base of its skull. The servitor collapsed, its systems shutting down. The second servitor adjusted its aim, tracking John's movement with mechanical precision. Its plasma weapon charged, the distinctive whine filling the corridor. John dove behind a support pillar as superheated gas turned the air where he had been standing into an oven. The heat blistered the rockcrete, melted metal fixtures. But John was already moving, circling around while the servitor's tracking systems struggled to compensate for his speed. He came up behind it and jammed his pistol into the coolant intake valve, fired 3 times. The servitor's plasma weapon overheated instantly, the feedback loop causing a catastrophic failure. The machine exploded in a shower of metal and burning flesh. Sub-level 94, John said to himself, pulling a data slate from a dead guard's belt. He had memorized the complex layout from files stolen during his previous kills, knew every corridor, every checkpoint, every defensive position. Knowledge was a weapon. Always had been. He moved deeper into the complex, leaving bodies in his wake. Not all of them. He did not kill the unarmed scribes, the civilians, just the guards, just the ones who raised weapons. There was still a line, however faint, that he would not cross. Not yet. On sub-level 94, in a sealed chamber surrounded by psi wards and reality anchors, Magos explorator Talvek worked at his data terminal. His mechadendrites interfaced directly with the cogitator systems, processing information at speeds human minds could not comprehend. He was studying the dimensional rift, the anomaly that had appeared 3 days ago, the tear in reality that defied all standard warp signatures. The readings were fascinating, terrifying. This was not a warp breach, not in the traditional sense. It was something else. A doorway between universes that existed in a space adjacent to, but distinct from the immaterium. The implications were staggering. If such rifts could be controlled, humanity could reach worlds beyond the Astronomican's light, could escape the Eye of Terror, could find new realms untouched by chaos. Or it could destroy everything, open doors that should remain closed, invite horrors from dimensions where the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Talvek's research was interrupted by alarms. Intruder in the complex, approaching this level. He activated his security protocols, sealing the chamber behind adamantium bulkheads that could withstand plasma bombardment. He was safe, had to be. Nothing could breach these defenses. The door exploded inward. John Wick stood in the smoking aperture, his suit torn and bloody but his eyes still clear, still focused. He held a plasma cutter in one hand, stolen from a maintenance bay. It was crude, designed for cutting through metal, not combat, but effective. Impossible, Talvek stated, his Vox emitter producing a flat mechanical tone. The door's integrity was calculated to withstand. I do not care about your calculations, John interrupted, tossing the plasma cutter aside. I need information about the rift, the one that brought me here. That information is classified, sealed by order of the Fabricator General himself. I cannot simply... John shot the Magos through his primary optical unit. The tech priest stumbled back, alarms screaming from his augmetic systems. You were saying? John asked quietly. Talvek recalculated. Threat assessment revised. Survival probability significantly reduced. What do you wish to know? How do I reopen it? How do I go home? The rift wasn't a standard warp phenomenon. It was a dimensional cascade caused by the intersection of two universes' quantum fields. The probability of such an event occurring naturally is, I did not ask for a lecture. Can it be reopened? Yes or no? Talvek processed. Theoretically, yes, but it would require massive amounts of energy, a controlled warp breach, and something to anchor the destination coordinates. Something from your original universe to guide the rift's formation. John pulled the small holoprojector from his pocket, the one with his dog's image. Will this work? Talvek's remaining optical units focused on the device, scanned it with sensors that could detect quantum signatures invisible to human perception. Extraordinary. This object carries a unique dimensional resonance. It is from your universe. It could serve as an anchor point, yes. Where? Where would I need to go to create this rift? The original breach point, in the Underhive. But Mr. Wick, you must understand, creating such a rift would require... The Magos stopped. His auditory sensors detected something. Movement in the corridor outside. Fast. Too fast. And a sound like screaming. Multiple voices. Dying. What is that? Talvek asked, genuine fear entering his mechanical voice. John turned toward the door, his pistol rising automatically. He knew that sound. Had heard it before in his own universe. The sound of something that existed only to kill. Something that had been programmed, conditioned, enhanced beyond sanity. "Your empire sent another assassin," he stated flatly. The wall exploded. Not the door. The wall. 10 meters of reinforced rockcrete simply disintegrated as something crashed through it, with enough force to shatter stone. Eversor Temple Assassin Unit 7 entered the chamber. It stood 2.5 meters tall, encased in power armor that was more life support system than protection. Tubes fed combat stimulants directly into its bloodstream. Neural implants suppressed all higher brain function, leaving only rage and the imperative to kill. In its hands, it carried a neuro gauntlet and an executioner pistol, weapons designed to kill space marines. And it was screaming, a constant, inhumanly high-pitched shriek that was part war cry, part indication of the endless agony of its existence. John did not hesitate. He fired every remaining round in his pistol at the Eversor's helmet visor. Point blank, center mass, perfect shots. The rounds sparked off the armor without leaving a scratch. The Eversor moved. John barely dodged the first swipe of the neuro gauntlet, the weapon passing centimeters from his head. Where it passed, the air itself seemed to scream, molecules torn apart by the weapon's field. He rolled, came up, grabbed a fallen guard's last rifle, and fired a sustained burst. The last beams splashed against the Eversor's armor like water. "Flee!" Talvek shouted, his mechadendrites flailing in panic. "Eversor cannot be stopped. They are the Assassinorum's final solution. Nothing survives them." John did not flee. He studied his opponent with the same cold assessment he had applied to every target in his career. Armor, impenetrable. Strength enhanced beyond human. Speed comparable to his own. Chemical cocktail suppressing pain and fear. Weaknesses. The Eversor charged again, its screaming reaching a fever pitch. John waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat. The assassin's momentum carried it past him, crashing into Talvek's data terminal. The Magos shrieked as his mechadendrites were torn away, his augmetic body crushed against the machinery. John grabbed a piece of broken rockcrete and hurled it at the Eversor's back, not to damage, to distract. The assassin turned, its remaining human eye visible through the cracked visor. Bloodshot. Insane. Seeing nothing but targets. "You are a weapon," John said, backing toward the destroyed wall. "I understand weapons. I was one." The Eversor fired its executioner pistol. Mass-reactive rounds designed to punch through ceramite. John had already moved, the rounds cratering the floor where he had stood. He grabbed a fallen support beam, metal torn free from the wall, and swung it like a staff. The beam struck the Eversor's helmet, did not damage it, but redirected the assassin's charge, sending it stumbling into a wall. John ran. Not in fear. In calculation. The Eversor could not be fought here. Not in close quarters where its enhancements gave it every advantage. He needed space, needed options, needed to turn the environment into a weapon. The Eversor pursued, crashing through walls instead of using doors. Its screaming echoed through the complex, driving scribes mad with terror. Some threw themselves from upper levels rather than face whatever made that sound. Others simply collapsed, their minds breaking under the psychological assault. John reached the main atrium, a vast open space that stretched 10 levels up to the complex's roof. Service gantries crisscrossed the space. Cargo lifts hung on massive chains. Perfect. The Eversor burst into the atrium behind him, its armor scorched and dented but its function unchanged. Kill. The only imperative that mattered. John shot the chain holding a cargo lift. 2 tons of metal and machinery dropped directly onto the Eversor. The impact would have killed anything unenhanced, would have crushed a normal human to paste. The Eversor caught it. Its servos screamed with the effort. Its enhanced muscles tore and regenerated in microseconds, but it held the lift, then hurled it aside with a roar of bestial rage. Impressive, John admitted. He fired his remaining las rifle rounds at the gantries above the Eversor. Metal screeched. Support bolts sheared. The entire structure collapsed. Dozens of tons of metal crashing down. The Eversor disappeared under the debris. John waited, his breathing controlled despite the exertion, counting seconds, watching for movement. The debris exploded outward. The Eversor emerged, one arm severed, its armor cracked and leaking chemicals, but still functional, still screaming, still advancing. John dropped the empty las rifle and pulled out his last weapon, a combat knife taken from a dead Arbitz, 6 inches of sharpened steel, against power armor and chemical enhancement. Laughable. But he had killed with less. The Eversor charged one final time, its remaining arm extending the neuro gauntlet. John did not dodge. He stepped inside the assassin's reach, too close for the weapon to track, and drove the knife upward into the exposed neck seal, where helmet met armor. The blade punched through the chemical tubes, feeding stimulants into the Eversor's system. The assassin froze. Not because the wound was fatal, because suddenly, for the first time in decades, its pain receptors were functioning without being suppressed by combat drugs. Every injury, every enhancement, every augmentation screamed at once. The Eversor's shriek changed pitch. From rage to agony. Pure, unfiltered, unbearable. It collapsed, clawing at its own helmet, trying to remove it, trying to stop the pain. Its body began to convulse as the withdrawal from the chemical cocktail hit like a tidal wave. John stepped back, watching dispassionately as the assassin tore itself apart, not through any action of his, just through the sudden realization of what had been done to it, what it had become. Within 2 minutes, the Eversor stopped moving. Dead, not from the wound, from shock, from the simple inability to process existence without the drugs that had sustained it. "I am sorry," John said quietly to the corpse, and he meant it. He recognized what the Eversor had been. A weapon, like him, except he had chosen his path. This thing had been made, broken, rebuilt, given no choice at all. He retrieved the data slate from Talvek's crushed body. The Magos was still barely alive, his augmetics sparking and failing. "The coordinates," Talvek gasped, his Vox emitter barely functioning. "The breach point, uploaded to Slate." "Thank you," John said. "Why do you fight so hard? To leave?" Talvek's optical units flickered. "This universe needs men like you, professional, focused. This universe needs nothing from me," John replied, "and I need nothing from it. I just want to go home." Talvek's systems failed completely. The Magos died with his question unanswered. John studied the data slate. The coordinates were clear. A specific location in the Underhive, the exact point where he had arrived in this nightmare universe. He could go there, could attempt to recreate the rift, but he would need help. Would need someone who understood warp technology. And according to Talvek's notes, there was only one group in the sector with that knowledge. A chaos cult. The realization settled on John like a weight. To go home, he would have to deal with the very forces that had corrupted this universe. Would have to make bargains with entities that existed only to spread madness and corruption. But what choice did he have? In the orbital platform above, Inquisitor Voss watched the picked feeds from the Administratum complex with something approaching awe. The Eversor was dead. An Eversor, the Assassinorum's ultimate weapon, defeated not through superior power but through understanding, through recognizing the weakness in its design. "He killed it by turning off its drugs," she said, her voice hollow. "No one has ever done that. No one has ever thought to do that." Master Kane stood beside her, silent. His analysis of the combat footage had reached a disturbing conclusion. John Wick was not just skilled, he was educated, trained in ways that suggested an entire civilization dedicated to the art of assassination, a civilization that had refined violence to a science the Imperium had never achieved. "What do we do now?" Voss asked. We have deployed our finest. All have failed. We offer him what he wants, Kaine replied. The rift, the way home, in exchange for service. He will refuse. He has refused every offer. Not if we make refusal impossible. Kaine activated a holo display, showing schematics of a device. The Magos' research indicated that creating a stable rift requires massive energy. Energy equivalent to a small star. We have such devices. Lance batteries, cyclonic weapons, tools of exterminatus. Dar, you want to help him leave? I want to make him dependent on us. If he needs our weapons to create the rift, he must negotiate, must compromise. And once he does that, we have leverage. Voss considered. It was risky. This John Wick had proven unpredictable, dangerous. But continuing to fight him was proving even more costly. 3 assassination attempts, hundreds dead, and he was still moving toward his goal, with mechanical determination. Contact him, she decided. Offer parley under continental rules. He respects those. It is the only code he seems to follow. Continental rules do not exist in this universe. Inquisitor. Then, we will create them. Temporarily. Whatever it takes to bring him to the negotiating table. In the Underhive, John received the transmission through a stolen Vox unit. The Inquisitor's voice was calm, professional, offering terms. Mr. Wick, I am Inquisitor Kayla Voss of the Ordo Hereticus. I understand you wish to return to your home universe. I can help you achieve this goal. In exchange, I ask for one service, one contract, after which you will be free to leave with our assistance. John listened, his face expressionless. He had heard similar offers before. They always came with hidden costs, with complications that multiplied until the original bargain was unrecognizable. But he had no other options. The data slate made it clear. Creating the rift required technology he did not have access to, could not steal, could only receive through cooperation. What service? He asked, his voice carrying through the Vox. There is a chaos cult in the neighboring sector. They have corrupted an entire hive world, billions of souls lost to the ruinous powers. We have tried to purge them, failed, lost 3 regiments and 2 Space Marine strike forces. They are led by a being called the Twisted Cardinal, a former ecclesiarch who turned to Slanesh. You want me to kill this cardinal? Yes, succeed, and I will personally ensure you receive everything necessary to create your rift. Refuse, and I will deploy enough force to level this entire hive. You will not die, but everyone around you will, and you will be trapped here forever. John closed his eyes, saw his wife's face, his dog, the life he had left behind, the peace he had found, all of it on the other side of an impossible barrier. One contract, he said finally. I complete it. You provide the equipment. I leave. No tricks, no complications. You have my word as an Inquisitor of the Holy Orders. Your word means nothing to me, but your fear does. You are afraid of me, afraid of what I represent. That fear will keep you honest. Voss felt a chill. He had cut through every pretense, seen the truth. Yes, she was afraid. More afraid than she had been of any daemon or Xenos or heretic in 3 decades of service. We have a bargain, Mr. Wick. Then send me the target file, and stay out of my way. The transmission ended. John stood alone in the darkness of the Underhive, holding a data slate containing information about his target, a corrupted priest, a servant of chaos. Everything he had tried to avoid dealing with. But for a chance to go home, he would walk through hell itself. And this universe's hell was very real. On the orbital platform, Master Kaine reviewed the contract they had just made. He will succeed, Inquisitor. The Twisted Cardinal will die. Of that I have no doubt. And then? Then we honor our bargain. Give him what he needs. Let him leave. You sound almost regretful. Kane nodded slowly. I am. Because when he is gone, we will have lost the chance to understand what made him. To learn how a baseline human achieved what our finest enhancements could not replicate. He is a reminder that the Imperium, for all its might, does not have all the answers. Perhaps that is for the best. Voss replied. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. But in the back of her mind, she wondered, if one man from another universe could cause this much disruption, what else existed beyond the barriers of reality? What other threats? What other wonders? The questions haunted her, would haunt her for the rest of her life. In the Underhive, John Wick began preparing for his final contract. He gathered weapons, studied the target file, planned his approach with the same mechanical precision he had applied to every job in his career. One last job. Then home. Then peace, if such a thing still existed for him. Section the third. The Twisted Cardinal. The hive world of Tertium Mortis had once produced weapons for the Imperial Guard. Billions of Las rifles, millions of tons of ammunition, enough firepower to arm entire crusades. Now it produced only screams. The corruption had started slowly. A cult in the lower hives, whispers of a new faith that promised sensation beyond the Emperor's dead gaze. Then, faster. Riots, massacres. The planetary governor executed by his own bodyguard. Within 6 months, the entire world had fallen to chaos. At the center of it all sat the Twisted Cardinal. John Wick studied the target file during the 3-day warp transit to Tertium Mortis. The ship was a small inquisitorial courier, crewed by servitors and monitored by gun servitors, programmed to kill him if he deviated from the mission parameters. He ignored them, focused only on the information. Cardinal Erasmus Voke had been a respected ecclesiarch. 3 centuries of faithful service. Thousands of sermons preached in the Emperor's name. Then, something had broken inside him. Or perhaps something had finally been revealed. The file was unclear on the specifics. What was clear was the result. Voke had turned to Slanesh, the chaos god of excess, had opened his mind to the warp, had been transformed from a man into something that existed between reality and madness, something that could no longer die through conventional means because it was anchored to the warp itself. 3 Space Marine strike forces had tried to kill him. The Silver Skulls had lost 20 brothers. The Mantis Warriors had lost 30. The Howling Griffins had lost their entire command squad, including their captain. All failures. You understand the target is beyond normal assassination protocols, Inquisitor Voss said through the ship's vox, her voice crackling with interference. The Twisted Cardinal is not simply a man anymore. He is a conduit for warp energy. Killing his physical form may not be sufficient. Then I will kill him until he stops coming back, John replied, still reading. That is not how chaos works, Mr. Wick. Death is not permanent for those blessed by the dark gods. They can be banished, disrupted. But true death requires, I have killed gods before, John interrupted, or things that believed they were gods. They died the same as everything else. Voss fell silent. She wanted to argue, to explain the fundamental differences between his universe and this one. But something in his voice suggested argument was pointless. He would do this his way, would adapt or detrying. And somehow, she suspected he would adapt. The ship translated from the warp 3 days later, emerging in the Tertium Mortis system. What the scopes revealed made even the servitor's limited emotional programming register distress. The hive world's surface was no longer gray industrial wasteland. It had been transformed into something obscene. The manufactorums had become temples of flesh and sensation. The hab blocks had fused together into impossible geometries that hurt to observe. And above it all, reality itself seemed to shimmer, the barrier between materium and immaterium worn thin by constant corruption. The planetary veil has collapsed, the ship's tech priest reported, his mechanical voice carrying a hint of genuine fear. The warp bleeds through. Landing will expose all personnel to psychic contamination. Estimated survival time for unshielded minds is 4 hours. How long do I need? John asked. To reach the Twisted Cardinal's sanctum in the central hive? 12 hours minimum, assuming no resistance. There will be resistance. Then you will not survive the psychic assault long enough to complete the mission. I recommend orbital bombardment, exterminatus. Cleanse the world and be done with it. John checked his equipment. Stub pistol, combat knife, las rifle. All stolen Imperial weapons, inferior to what he was used to but functional. No, I have a contract. I will complete it. You will die. Probably. But I will finish the job first. The drop pod launched 2 hours later, a crude metal coffin designed to deliver a single soldier through atmospheric entry. John rode it down, feeling the heat build around him as friction turned the air to fire. The pod hit ground in what had once been an industrial sector, now transformed into something that looked like flesh and metal had been forced to breed. The door blasted open. John emerged with his rifle raised. The corrupted citizens of Tertium Mortis were waiting. They had once been human, workers, guards, administratum scribes. Now they were grotesque parodies, their bodies twisted by exposure to Slaaneish's influence. Some had too many limbs. Others had faces that split open to reveal impossible depths. All of them radiated an aura of wrongness that made John's skin crawl. They attacked immediately, not with weapons but with their bare hands, hands that ended in claws, in blades of bone, in appendages that had no name in any language. John fired controlled bursts, each shot dropping a target. The corrupted did not die cleanly. They writhed, screamed, begged for more sensation even as their bodies failed. Some tried to embrace their wounds, to experience the pain as pleasure. It was obscene, disturbing, but John had seen disturbing before. He moved through them with mechanical efficiency, conserving ammunition, always advancing toward the central hive where his target waited. The psychic pressure began after the first hour. Not obvious at first, just a whisper at the edge of perception. Suggestions, promises. The warp, reaching into his mind, seeking purchase. You could stay, the whispers said. You could rule here. These people would worship you, give you anything you desire. John ignored them, focused on his objective, one foot in front of the other, the same discipline that had carried him through a lifetime of violence. Your wife is dead, the whispers continued, probing for weakness. Your dog is gone. What are you returning to? Emptiness. Here, you could have purpose again, could be feared and respected as you once were. No, John said aloud, his voice cutting through the psychic assault. I am going home. The whispers intensified, becoming screams. Images flooded his mind. His wife, alive, smiling, offering her hand. But her eyes were wrong, swirling with colors that should not exist. And behind her, he could see the strings, the manipulation, the lie. John pushed through it, had spent years building mental walls in his original universe, learning to ignore pain and fear and doubt. This was just another voice trying to control him, another manipulation to resist. By the third hour, he reached the inner sanctum. A cathedral that had once celebrated the emperor now celebrated something else. The walls were alive, breathing, pulsing with unnatural rhythms. The pews were occupied by the faithful, their bodies fused together into a singular mass of worship. And at the altar stood the twisted cardinal. Erasmus Voke had been tall in life. In corruption, he had grown. 3 meters of warped flesh and exposed muscle. His robes had fused with his skin, becoming part of him. His face split vertically, revealing a secondary visage beneath. Both spoke simultaneously in harmony and discord. Welcome, assassin from beyond, the voices said, each word carrying multiple meanings. We have been expecting you. John raised his rifle. You know why I am here. Of course, the Inquisition sends its finest against us. Though you are not Imperial, are you? You are something else. Something new. The Cardinal tilted both heads, studying John with eyes that saw beyond the physical. You are pain given form, loss given purpose. Interesting. The Dark Prince finds you fascinating. I am not interested in your god's opinion, but it is interested in you, so focused, so determined, such exquisite suffering buried beneath that controlled exterior. You would make a wonderful champion, a herald of sensation in all its forms. John fired. The last beam struck the cardinal's chest, burning through robes and flesh. The corrupted priest staggered back, then laughed, both mouths simultaneously, the sound echoing through the cathedral. "You cannot kill us with imperial toys," the voices said. The wound was already healing, flesh knitting together with obscene speed. "We are beyond death, beyond your mortal concerns. We are eternal." "Nothing is eternal," John replied, firing again, this time targeting the cardinal's legs. The priest collapsed but continued laughing, his body already regenerating. "Stubborn. We admire that. Tell us, assassin, what would it take to turn you? What price would convince you to serve the Prince of Pleasure?" "There is no price." "Ah, everyone has a price. Your wife, your peace, your home. We could give you all of that, could reach across dimensions and bring them here. All we ask is worship, devotion, surrender to sensation." John ejected the spent power cell from his rifle and loaded a fresh one. "I have heard this pitch before. In my universe, in this one, it is always the same. Power for service, pleasure for obedience. And it always ends the same way. Slavery dressed up as freedom. You speak from experience." "I do. I served once, served the high table, served the Continental, served the system that made me what I am. Then I walked away. Found something better. I will not make that mistake again." The twisted cardinal rose, his regeneration complete. "Then you will die here. Not a death of the body. That would be mercy. A death of the soul. Trapped in sensation so intense that your mind shatters. Broken into pieces that will experience forever, without end." The cathedral's walls contracted. The fused faithful began to scream, their voices harmonizing into a weapon. The psychic assault intensified, no longer whispers but thunderous commands. Submit. Serve. Surrender. John felt his mind beginning to fracture under the pressure. Saw images of his wife twisting into corruption, his dog transformed into something obscene. Every memory he cherished warped and violated. He did what he had always done when overwhelmed. He focused on the immediate, on the physical, on the one thing he could control, his body. The rifle clicked empty. John discarded it, drew his pistol, advanced on the cardinal while firing. Each shot placed with perfect precision, not to kill. That was impossible. But to disrupt, to damage, to buy seconds. The cardinal's primary head exploded. The secondary began to grow, replacing it. John shot that one too, kept firing until the pistol was empty. Then he drew his knife. "Impressive determination," the voices said, now emanating from the cardinal's chest. Multiple mouths had formed there, speaking in chorus. "But futile. You cannot kill what is already dead, what exists beyond your limited comprehension of mortality." John reached the altar. The cardinal's hands shot out, impossibly fast, wrapping around his throat. The touch burned, not with heat but with pure wrongness. Reality rejecting reality. The warp touching the materium. "Your soul is strong," the voices observed. "Clean, unsullied by chaos. The Dark Prince would feast on such purity for centuries." John's vision darkened. The pressure on his throat was crushing, but his hands still moved, still functioned. He drove the knife upward, not into flesh but into the altar itself, the ancient stone that had been consecrated to the Emperor before being corrupted to Slanesh. The knife's blade scraped against something hard, something that radiated wrongness in the opposite direction, not corruption but purity, a relic, hidden within the desecrated altar, something the cardinal had not fully corrupted. John grabbed it, pulled it free even as his consciousness began to fade. An aquila, gold, small, blessed by the Emperor himself during the Great Crusade, 10,000 years old, a fragment of true faith in a temple of perversion. The effect was immediate. The cathedral screamed, the walls convulsed. The fused faithful burst apart, their connection to the warp severed by the relic's proximity, and the twisted cardinal's grip loosened as true pain, real pain, flooded through his warped form. "No," the voices gasped. "That should not exist here. We consumed everything, corrupted everything. How?" "You missed something," John rasped, his voice hoarse. He pressed the Aquila against the Cardinal's chest. Where it touched, flesh burned. Not with warp fire, but with its opposite. With faith. With certainty. With the absolute conviction that the Emperor protects. John did not believe in the Emperor, did not worship any god, but the Cardinal believed. And that belief, inverted and corrupted, was what sustained his existence. The Aquila represented everything he had betrayed, every vow broken, every truth abandoned. It represented guilt, and guilt was a weapon sharper than any blade. The twisted Cardinal's body began to collapse inward, the warp energies sustaining it disrupted by the relic's presence. Both faces screamed, not in pleasure, but in genuine terror, the terror of a soul facing judgment. "You cannot do this," the voices pleaded, all mockery gone. "We are eternal. We are blessed. We are—" "Nothing," John finished. "You are nothing. Just another corrupt thing that needed to die." He drove the Aquila deeper, pushing it through warped flesh until it reached the core, the place where Vok's original soul still existed, twisted and tortured but not quite destroyed. The fragment of the man who had once believed. That fragment recognized the relic, remembered what it represented, and in that moment of clarity, it rejected everything it had become. The twisted Cardinal detonated, not physically but spiritually. His connection to the warp severed completely, the backlash creating a psychic shockwave that rippled through the entire hive. Every cultist collapsed simultaneously, their minds freed from the Cardinal's influence. Most died instantly. A few survived, their minds shattered beyond recovery. John was thrown back by the blast, his body impacting the cathedral wall with enough force to break ribs. He lay there, breathing hard, the Aquila still clutched in his hand. The cathedral began to collapse. Without the warp energies sustaining it, the impossible architecture failed. Stone and flesh rained down from the ceiling. The breathing walls went still, dead meat reverting to its original form. John forced himself to stand, ignoring the pain. Ignored the blood running from his ears and nose, focused only on escape. He had completed the contract. Now he needed to collect payment. He stumbled through the dying cathedral, past the corpses of the faithful, out into the transformed hive. Around him, the corruption was fading, not vanishing, not healing, but losing its vitality, becoming static, dead. The extraction beacon was where the Inquisition had promised. A landing zone cleared of rubble. John activated his Vox, his voice barely working. Contract complete. Target eliminated. Requesting extraction. Above the planet, on the inquisitorial ship, Voss received the transmission with genuine shock. He did it. Emperor preserve us. He actually did it. Master Kine stood beside her, reviewing the sensor data. The psychic signature has collapsed. The warp contamination is dissipating. The hive world can be reclaimed. How? Voss demanded. 3 Space Marine strike forces failed. How did one man succeed? Because he is not bound by our limitations, Kine replied. He does not fight with faith or ideology. He fights with pure practicality. Saw a weakness we could not see because we were too close to it. The relic. The Emperor's blessing. It was there all along, but we assumed it had been destroyed or removed. He assumed nothing, just searched until he found what he needed. The extraction Valkyrie descended through the atmosphere, its pilot guided by John's beacon. It found him standing alone in the rubble, still holding the golden Aquila. His suit torn and bloodied, but his eyes still clear, still focused, still determined to go home. The pilot landed. John climbed aboard without a word. As the Valkyrie lifted away, he looked down at the dying hive. Billions had lived here. Most were dead now. A few would survive, their minds broken but their bodies intact. The Imperium would reclaim them, put them to work, extract every ounce of productivity before discarding them. Standard procedure in this universe. John felt nothing for them, could not afford to feel. He had his own concerns, his own goal. Everything else was just noise. Back on the orbital platform, Inquisitor Voss waited in the docking bay as the Valkyrie returned. She had prepared a full honor guard, Tempestus Scions in ceremonial formation, a gesture of respect for someone who had accomplished the impossible. John emerged from the Valkyrie and walked past them without acknowledgement, straight to Voss. He held out the Aquila. "Your relic. I am assuming you want it back." Voss took it with reverent hands. "You found the Emperor's blessing, used it as a weapon. That is, unprecedented. It was just a tool, like everything else. It is sacred. To you, to me, it was leverage against a target's psychological weaknesses. Nothing more." John's eyes bored into hers. "Now honor your contract. Give me what I need to create the rift." Voss hesitated. Now that the contract was complete, she had options. Could order his death, could imprison him, could refuse to honor the bargain and force him to comply through other means. But she saw something in his eyes, a promise, unspoken but absolutely clear. If she betrayed him now, he would kill her, would kill everyone on this platform, would tear through every defense the Imperium could deploy until he either succeeded or finally died trying. And she was not certain he could die. "Master Kane," she said quietly, "escort Mr. Wick to the armory. Provide him with the equipment specified in the contract." Kane nodded and gestured for John to follow. They walked through the platform's corridors in silence, two professionals who understood each other perfectly. Both killers, both shaped by systems that demanded absolute obedience, both carrying scars that would never heal. "You are not like other assassins," Kane said as they entered the armory. "You have no faith, no ideology. What drives you? I told you, I want to go home. That cannot be all. You have killed hundreds, faced impossible odds, survived things that should have destroyed you. There must be something more, some deeper purpose." John stopped walking, turned to face Kane directly. "My wife died. Cancer. Painful. Slow. Before she passed, she gave me a gift, a dog, something to help me grieve, to keep me from falling back into the life I had left behind. And some people took that from me, killed the dog, thought it was nothing, just an animal. They were wrong. It was everything, the last piece of her, the last reason to stay human. So, you killed them." I killed everyone connected to them, burned down the organization they served, walked away from that world forever, or tried to. John's expression did not change, but something in his voice carried an edge that made even Kine tense. "Then, your Imperium pulled me into this nightmare, forced me to become what I had left behind. And now I am going to leave again. Go home, find whatever peace is still possible. And if it is not possible, if your world has moved on, if there is nothing to return to, then at least I will die trying to find it, instead of dying here, in a universe that is not mine, for causes I do not believe in." Kine understood. Perhaps for the first time in his centuries of service, he truly understood what drove someone to fight without faith or duty. Simple, human need. The desire for something that existed beyond war and death and endless violence. "The equipment you requested is here," Kine said, gesturing to a sealed container. "Portable lance battery, modified for single-use discharge, capable of generating the energy required for a dimensional rift. Additionally, we have provided coordinates for the original breach point and a modified Geller field generator to protect you during the transition. Will it work? Theoretically, yes. The Magos's calculations suggest an 87% probability of successful rift formation. What happens after that is unknown. Your universe may not be reachable. The rift may deposit you in an entirely different reality, or it may collapse mid-transition and scatter your atoms across multiple dimensions. Better than staying here. Is it? You have proven yourself in this universe. You could serve the Imperium, become an honored hero, have anything you desired within reason." John picked up the equipment container, testing its weight. I do not want honor, do not want service. I just want to be left alone. That is a luxury no one can afford in this universe. Good thing I am leaving then. Kaine watched him go, carrying the equipment toward the hangar where a transport waited to take him back to the surface, back to the Underhive, where his journey had begun. The assassin felt something unfamiliar as the stranger disappeared from view. Envy. John Wick was leaving, returning to a universe where his skills might not be needed, where peace was possible, where people could choose to walk away from violence. Kaine had never known such a universe, would never know it. He was born into this hell, would die in it, would serve the Emperor until his body failed and his soul was consumed by duty. There was no other option, no escape, no home to return to, just endless war. In the transport heading back to the surface, John Wick sat alone with his equipment and his thoughts. The contract was complete, the bargain honored. Now he just needed to reach the breach point and activate the device. Simple, in theory, but something nagged at him, a sense that the Imperium would not let him go so easily. That, despite Voss's word, despite the contract, there would be one final complication. There always was. He checked his stolen pistol, loaded a fresh magazine, prepared for the possibility that his journey was not quite over. And in the depths of the warp, the dark gods watched with interest. This anomaly from beyond their reach had caused disruptions, had killed one of Slaaneish's favored servants, had proven immune to corruption. They could not allow him to leave unmolested, could not permit a reminder that their influence had limits, that some things existed beyond their grasp. A reckoning was coming. John Wick did not know it yet, but he would soon, very soon. The Underhive never changed. While empires rose and fell in the spires above, while wars consumed planets and sectors burned, the Underhive remained constant. Dark, poisoned, a realm where survival was measured in hours, and hope had died millennia ago. John Wick returned to it, like coming home. The transport dropped him at the same coordinates where he had first arrived in this universe. The breach point, a collapsed section of the lower hive where reality had torn and deposited him into this nightmare. Now he would tear it open again, force his way back through sheer determination and imperial technology. He set up the portable lance battery with practiced efficiency. The device was crude compared to what he was used to in his universe, but functional. It hummed with barely contained energy, capacitors charging from the compact fusion core. Around it, he arranged the Geller field generators in a perfect circle. They would protect him from the warp during the transition. Hopefully, the holoprojector with his dog's image sat at the circle's center, the anchor point, the piece of home that would guide the rift's formation. 30 minutes until the device reaches full charge, John muttered, checking the data slate. 30 minutes to wait, to remember, to wonder if this would actually work, or if he would simply be vaporized by the lance discharge. Either way, it would be over. He heard them before he saw them. Footsteps, dozens of them, moving with military precision through the Underhive's corridors. Not gangs, not cultists, soldiers. The Tempestus Scions emerged from 3 different approaches, their hellguns raised and tracking. 50 of them, the Imperium's elite stormtroopers. Behind them came heavier assets, Ogren bodyguards, sentinel walkers, even a pair of Lemon Rust battle tanks, somehow transported down into the Underhive's confines. And leading them, Inquisitor Kyla Voss herself. Her power armor gleamed in the dim light. Her bolt pistol hung at her hip. Her face showed no emotion. "Mr. Wick," she called out. "Step away from the device." John's hand moved to his pistol. "We had a contract. The contract is fulfilled. You killed the Twisted Cardinal. I provided the equipment, but I never agreed to let you use it. You gave your word. I gave the word of an Inquisitor. And an Inquisitor's duty is to the Imperium first, always." Voss stepped forward, her guards maintaining formation around her. "You are too dangerous to release, Mr. Wick. Too skilled, too adaptable. If you return to your universe, you take knowledge of ours with you, knowledge of our weaknesses, our methods. That cannot be allowed. I do not care about your empire. Do not want anything from it. Just want to leave. I know. That is what makes you dangerous. You have no faith we can exploit. No ideology we can manipulate. No desires we can use as leverage. You are a variable we cannot control, and the Imperium does not tolerate what it cannot control. John's finger tightened on his pistol's grip. 50 Hellguns tracked the movement, one trigger pull from 50 different angles. Even he could not dodge that, could not survive the concentrated fire. You can kill me, he said quietly, but you will lose at least 30 soldiers doing it, maybe more. Is that acceptable? Yes, Voss replied without hesitation. Because the alternative is letting you leave, and that is unacceptable. Why? What threat am I to you once I am gone? You are proof, Mr. Wick. Proof that there are other universes, other realities, other ways of existing beyond the Imperium's control. That knowledge, if it spreads, could undermine everything we have built, could make our citizens question, wonder, hope for something different. Her expression hardened. Hope is heresy, and heresy must be purged. John understood. The Imperium's power was not built on strength alone. It was built on certainty, on the absolute conviction that there was no alternative, that this hell was the only possible existence. He represented doubt, and doubt was more dangerous than any weapon. Last chance, Voss said. Surrender. Submit to mind wipe. We will erase your memories of your home universe and press you into service. You will become an Imperial asset. Live out your days serving the Emperor. It is a mercy, Mr. Wick, more than most receive. I was pressed into service once before, John replied. Spent my entire life as someone else's weapon. Then I got free. I will not go back. Then you'd hear. Probably, but not before completing my mission. He turned away from them, faced the lance battery, reached for the activation switch. Fire! Voss commanded. 50 Hellguns discharged simultaneously. The air filled with las beams, a web of deadly energy converging on John's position. The Sentinel walkers opened up with their heavy bolters. The Lehman Russ tanks fired their main cannons, high explosive shells screaming through the confined space. The devastation was apocalyptic. The section of Underhive where John had been standing simply ceased to exist, vaporized by concentrated Imperial firepower. Rubble rained down. Support structures collapsed. Fires erupted from ruptured promethium lines. When the barrage finally stopped, nothing remained but a smoking crater. Voss lowered her bolt pistol, which she had not needed to fire. Confirm target elimination. A scion with an Auspex scanner moved forward, his equipment sweeping the destruction. Life signs negative. No biomass detected larger than... The lance battery activated. John had thrown himself clear at the last possible instant, using the initial las fire as cover. While the scions had been focused on his previous position, he had circled around behind them, moving through the Underhive's shadows with the same skills that had kept him alive through countless impossible situations. And while they celebrated his death, he had activated the device remotely using the data slate. The lance battery discharged with enough force to light up the entire Underhive. A column of pure energy lanced upward, punching through level after level of hab blocks and manufactorums. At its apex, reality screamed. The barrier between universes tore open, creating a swirling vortex of impossible colors. The rift. His way home. But the Geller field generators had been destroyed in the barrage. Without their protection, the warp bled through the rift, unfiltered. Tempestus scions screamed as their minds touched the immaterium. Some collapsed, their sanity shattered. Others turned their weapons on each other, their perceptions warped by warp exposure. Voss stood firm, her faith in the Emperor acting as a shield against the psychic assault. All units fall back, get clear of the rift. But John was running toward it, sprinting through the chaos, through the collapsing scion formation, toward the swirling gateway that represented escape. An Ogren bodyguard, too simple to be affected by the warp's influence, moved to intercept. 3 meters of muscle and bone and stubbornness. It grabbed for John with hands that could crush skulls. John slid between its legs, came up behind it, and shot it through the back of the knee. The giant collapsed, its roar of pain echoing through the underhive. John kept running. A sentinel walker pivoted, its heavy bolter tracking. John grabbed a fallen scion's body and used it as a shield. The mass-reactive rounds tore through the corpse, but lost momentum. John discarded the body and fired his pistol at the walker's vision port. The armored glass cracked. The pilot inside pulled back instinctively. John used those precious seconds to get past. 20 meters from the rift. 15. 10. Voss appeared in his path. Her power armor gave her speed beyond normal human. Her bolt pistol was already raised and firing. The first round struck the ground near John's feet, cratering the rockcrete. The second passed centimeters from his head. The third would have hit center mass if John had not twisted at the last instant, the round clipping his shoulder instead of his chest. The impact spun him around, sending him stumbling, but he did not fall. Could not fall. Not this close. "You will not escape!" Voss roared, charging forward with her power sword drawn. The blade crackled with energy, capable of cutting through tank armor. John raised his pistol, fired his last 3 rounds. One struck Voss's pauldron, deflecting harmlessly. One hit her helmet, cracking the vision port. The third struck her sword arm at the elbow joint, finding the weak point in the power armor's articulation. Voss's grip weakened. The power sword fell from nerveless fingers. But she was not done. She grabbed for John with her functioning arm, her gauntleted hand closing on his jacket. They stood there, locked together, the rift swirling behind them, both breathing hard, both determined, both unwilling to yield. "Why?" Voss demanded, her voice distorted through her damaged Voxcaster. "Why fight so hard to leave? You could have everything here. Respect, purpose, a place in something greater than yourself." "Because I already had everything," John replied, his voice hoarse. "And I lost it. The only thing I have left is the memory, and I will not let your Imperium take that too." He drove his knee into her damaged arm. Voss gasped, her grip loosening. John tore free and ran the final steps to the rift. Behind him, he heard Voss screaming orders, heard the roar of engines as the Lehman Russ tanks repositioned for a clear shot, heard the distinctive whine of hellguns charging. But he was already diving into the vortex, felt reality tear around him, felt the warp trying to invade his mind, to corrupt his soul, to claim him for the dark gods who waited hungrily in the immaterium. And in that moment, suspended between universes, John Wick saw them. The 4 ruinous powers: Khorne, god of blood and war; Tsiench, god of schemes and change; Nurgle, god of disease and despair; Slaanesh, god of excess and sensation. They reached for him, offered him power, offered him purpose, offered him everything. He told them all the same thing. No. The warp recoiled, confused. No mortal had ever refused all 4 dark gods simultaneously. Even the strongest souls could be tempted by at least one. But this anomaly from beyond their reach had no interest in their gifts, because he had learned something in his long, violent life. Power was slavery, purpose was chains, and the only freedom was walking away. The rift collapsed behind him as he fell through dimensions. The lance battery's energy spent, the connection severed. The Imperium lost in the distance between universes. On the underhive floor, Voss knelt in the rubble, her armor sparking from damage, her arm numb from injury. Around her, the surviving scions were recovering from the warp exposure. The Ogryn was dead. One of the sentinel walkers had collapsed. The tanks had fired, but hit nothing. "Did he escape?" she asked, her voice hollow. Master Kaine approached, his mask unreadable as always, but something in his posture suggested satisfaction. "Yes, Inquisitor. The rift has closed. Mr. Wick is gone. We failed. Did we? He eliminated a threat we could not handle, removed himself from our universe, and cost us minimal casualties in the process. Some might call that a successful outcome. Voss looked at him sharply. You sound almost glad he escaped. Not glad, but not disappointed either. We cannot control everything, Inquisitor. Cannot categorize every threat. Cannot prepare for every contingency. Sometimes, the best outcome is letting the anomaly resolve itself. The High Lords will not see it that way. Then, we tell them John Wick died in the warp exposure, that his body was never recovered. It is not technically a lie. The man who entered this universe died the moment he refused to serve it. What escaped was simply a memory, a ghost returning home. Voss considered. It was not the outcome she had wanted, but Kaine was right. Some battles could not be won through force. Some threats could only be endured and survived. Very well. Report him as deceased. Rift incident claimed his life. The Twisted Cardinal case is closed. As you command, Inquisitor. They left the Underhive, taking their wounded and dead with them. Behind them, the collapse continued. The levels destroyed by the lance discharge were falling inward, burying the breach point under thousands of tons of rubble. Within days, it would be sealed completely. Just another scar in an Underhive filled with scars. And in the lower levels, where light never reached, the workers who had witnessed the event began to whisper about the stranger in the black suit, about the man who had defied the Imperium and escaped, about someone who had walked away from the Inquisition and lived. They called him the Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, the legend who proved that escape was possible, that the Imperium's grip could be broken, that freedom existed somewhere, even if only in another universe. It was a dangerous legend, a heretical thought, but it spread nonetheless, whispered in the darkness, passed from worker to worker, growing with each telling, and in the spires above, the Inquisition would spend decades trying to suppress it, trying to erase the memory of John Wick, trying to restore the certainty that the Imperium was absolute. They would fail, because some legends could not be killed, could not be erased, could only be buried under more lies until everyone forgot they had once been true. But they remained, waiting, ready to resurface when someone else dared to dream of escape. Meanwhile, John fell through the spaces between dimensions, through colors that had no names, through geometries that violated physical laws, through time that moved backward and forward simultaneously. He held tight to the hollow projector, to the image of his dog, to the anchor that would guide him home, if home still existed, if the rift had formed correctly, if the calculations were accurate. Too many ifs. But it was too late to reconsider now. Reality stabilized around him. He felt solid ground, felt gravity reasserting itself, felt air that did not taste of chemicals and despair. John opened his eyes. He stood in an alley. Night. City lights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement. The sound of traffic in the distance. Buildings that reached toward the sky without looking like Gothic nightmares. People walking past the alley entrance, oblivious to the dimensional breach that had just occurred. Home. He was home. John's legs gave out. He collapsed against a wall, breathing hard, not from exertion but from overwhelming relief. He had done it, had fought his way through an entire universe, had killed what needed killing, had refused corruption from gods themselves, had walked away from an empire that spanned 1,000,000 worlds. And he had come home. He activated the hollow projector. His dog's image appeared, frozen mid-play, a moment captured before everything had gone wrong, before loss and grief and violence had consumed his life again. "I am back," he whispered to the image, to the memory, to the ghost of everything he had lost. "I made it back." No response. Of course not. The dog was gone. His wife was gone. The life he had built was gone. But the memory remained. And that would have to be enough. John stood, testing his injuries. The shoulder wound from Voss's bolt pistol was bleeding, but not fatal. His ribs were cracked from the Eversor fight. His entire body ached from 3 days of constant violence. But he was alive, was functional, was home. He walked out of the alley, joining the flow of pedestrian traffic. No one looked twice at him, just another man in a ruined suit. Probably drunk, probably homeless, certainly not their problem. Perfect anonymity, perfect normalcy, perfect peace. John made his way to his house by instinct, following routes he had walked 1,000 times. The lights were off, no one home. Of course not. Time moved differently between universes. It might have been days here, might have been years. He had no way of knowing until he checked. He opened the door, entering the space that had once been his sanctuary. Everything was exactly as he had left it. The furniture, the pictures on the walls, even the dog's bowl still sitting in the corner, waiting for a meal that would never come. Time had not passed, or at least, not much. Perhaps only hours. Perhaps the universe had spat him out at nearly the same moment he had left. A small mercy in a situation that had held none. John collapsed onto his couch, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion, the pain, the accumulated trauma of fighting through a universe designed to break the human spirit. He had survived, had escaped, had returned, but at what cost? He had killed hundreds, perhaps thousands, had committed atrocities in the name of getting home, had become exactly what he had tried to leave behind. The monster, the weapon, the Baba Yaga. Sleep claimed him before he could consider further, his body shutting down, demanding rest after being pushed beyond all reasonable limits. He dreamed of cathedrals and corrupted priests, of golden warriors and impossible gods, of an inquisitor who had tried to keep him prisoner in hell. And he dreamed of a simple truth, that no matter how far he ran, no matter how hard he fought, violence would always find him, would always pull him back, because that was what he was, what he would always be. A killer. Polished and refined, pointed and released, forever. 3 months passed. John Wick lived quietly in the aftermath of his return. He recovered from his injuries, cleaned his house, tried to rebuild the routines that had once given his life structure and meaning. Morning runs, afternoon maintenance, evening solitude. But something had changed. Or perhaps something had been revealed that could not be hidden again. He dreamed every night, not of his wife, not of his dog, but of the Imperium, of the underhive where workers died nameless, of the Inquisitor who had tried to cage him, of the corrupted Cardinal, and the Eversor and the Calidus, and all the other horrors he had faced. And he dreamed of the Whispers, the workers who had called him Baba Yaga, who had seen him defy the Imperium and escape, who had been given something more dangerous than weapons or technology. Hope. John woke from these dreams covered in cold sweat, knowing the truth he did not want to acknowledge. He had left them behind, all those billions, trapped in that nightmare universe, suffering under a system that saw them as nothing but resources to be consumed and discarded. He told himself it was not his problem, not his universe, not his responsibility. But the dreams persisted. On the 93rd day after his return, John received a visitor. The knock came at dawn. Precise, 3 strikes, a rhythm that meant something in a language he had thought left behind. John approached the door with his pistol drawn, moving silently through his own house like an intruder. He opened the door carefully, ready for anything, ready for nothing. A woman stood on his doorstep. Young, professional bearing, wearing a black suit that looked almost continental but not quite. Her face was unfamiliar, but her eyes held a quality he recognized, the sharp focus of someone who had seen beyond normal reality. "Mr. Wick," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent. "Not American. Something else. My name is Adept Secundus Vale. I represent an organization that does not officially exist. May I come in?" John did not lower his pistol. "Which organization?" "The one that operates between the cracks of the Imperium. The one that remembers there are other ways to exist. The one that has been trying to reach you since your departure from our universe." She held up her hands, showing they were empty. "I am not here to harm you. I am here with an offer." John studied her for a long moment, saw no weapons, no visible threats, but something about her suggested danger nonetheless, the kind that came from knowledge rather than violence. He stepped aside, allowing her entry but keeping his pistol ready. Vale entered, her eyes taking in the house with professional assessment. She saw the pictures of his wife, the dog's bowl, the life preserved like a museum exhibit. "You left something behind," she stated, settling into a chair without being invited. "Not intentionally, but it is there nonetheless, growing." "Explain." "The workers who saw you, who witnessed your defiance, they began to question, to wonder, to hope, small things at first, refusing mandatory overtime, asking for better rations, forming groups that discussed ideas beyond their station." Vale leaned forward. The Inquisition noticed, began purges, hundreds dead, then thousands, but the idea would not die. Because you proved it was possible. Proved that the Imperium could be defied, escaped, survived. "Not my problem," John said flatly. "Is it not? You planted that seed, whether you intended to or not. Now it grows. And the Imperium responds with the only solution it knows: violence, suppression, mass execution. They would have found another excuse, another reason. The Imperium kills because that is what it does." True. But this is different. This is organized, purposeful. They are forming something new, something that has not existed in the Imperium for millennia. A resistance movement, small, fragile, doomed to fail without external assistance. John's expression did not change, but his finger moved away from the trigger. "You want me to go back? To help them?" "No. We want you to know that you have a choice. The Continental exists across dimensions, Mr. Wick. We have been watching you, studying you. We saw what you did in that universe, how you fought, how you escaped, how you refused corruption even from gods themselves." She produced a coin from her pocket, gold, stamped with the Continental marker. But this one was different. The symbol had been modified, enhanced. It glowed faintly with energy that should not exist in his universe. "This is a dimensional marker," Vale explained. "It can open a rift, take you back to the Imperium, to the Underhive where your legend began. You could help them, teach them, show them how to fight not with faith or ideology, but with the pure practical violence that defines you. And if I refuse? Then you stay here, live out your life in peace. The resistance will be crushed within a year. The Imperium will continue as it always has, and the dreams will probably stop, eventually." John stared at the coin, at the impossible choice it represented. He had escaped that hell, had fought and bled and nearly died to get home. Now someone was asking him to go back, to throw himself into a war that could not be won, against an empire of 1,000,000 worlds. "Why me?" he asked. "The Continental has resources, operatives. Why not send someone else? Because it has to be you. You are the symbol they need, the proof that escape is possible, that the Imperium is not absolute. Anyone else would just be another fighter, another body to throw at the machine. But you are the Baba Yaga, the legend, the impossible thing that should not exist but does." Vale stood, setting the coin on the table between them. "The choice is yours, Mr. Wick. No pressure, no obligations, no contracts, just a choice." She walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing. The Inquisitor. Voss. She survived. She knows you escaped. She has been searching for a way to follow, to finish what she started. If she finds a method, she will come for you. Here, in your home, in your sanctuary. Let her come. Will you? Or will you be somewhere else? Somewhere she cannot reach, fighting a war you never wanted but cannot seem to escape?" Vale left without waiting for an answer. The door closed behind her with a soft click. John stood alone in his house, staring at the golden coin on the table. He picked it up, felt its weight, felt the energy contained within, felt the promise and threat it represented. The dreams would not stop. He knew that now, knew that some part of him would always be in that universe, connected to the workers he had inspired, to the resistance he had accidentally created, to the war that would be fought, whether he participated or not. He could stay here, could try to reclaim the peace he had built, could wait for the Inquisition to eventually find a way through and face them on his home ground. Or he could go back, could walk into hell again, could become the weapon those people needed, the monster that fought monsters, the legend that stood against an empire. Neither choice offered peace. Neither choice offered escape. Both just offered different flavors of violence and death. John set the coin back on the table, made a decision that surprised even himself. Not yet. He would not rush back into that nightmare, would not throw himself into someone else's war just because they needed a symbol. He had earned his rest, had paid for it in blood and pain across 2 universes. But he would not destroy the coin either, would not close that door permanently, because Vale was right. The Inquisition would come, Voss would find a way, and when that happened, he needed options. So he would wait, would train, would prepare, would live his life day by day until the decision was made for him, because that was how it always worked. The world would not let him rest, would keep pulling him back into violence, into death, into the role he had tried so hard to leave behind. He was John Wick, the Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, the man who killed with such precision that gods themselves had taken notice. And somewhere between dimensions, in an empire of eternal war, people were fighting and dying because they believed he had shown them a way out, because they thought escape was possible, because he had given them the one thing the Imperium could not tolerate: hope. He owed them nothing, had no obligation, no duty, no contract. But he remembered the workers, remembered their dead eyes, remembered how they had looked at him with something resembling faith. Not in the Emperor, in him, in the possibility he represented. And he remembered the Inquisitor's words. That hope was heresy, that questioning was death, that the Imperium's power came from absolute certainty that there was no alternative. He had broken that certainty, had proven it false, and now people were dying because of it. Not yet, he repeated to the empty house, to the ghosts of his past, to the legend he had become. But soon, because some debts could not be ignored, some responsibilities could not be escaped, some choices were not really choices at all. He would return to that universe, eventually, not to save it, not to lead a rebellion, not to be anyone's hero, but to finish what he had started, to kill what needed killing, to show them that the Imperium, for all its might, could bleed, and bleeding things could die. In the Warhammer 40,000 universe, on Hive Praxis, in the Underhive where light never reached, a group of workers gathered in secret. 20 of them. All had seen the stranger in the black suit. All had heard the legend of the Baba Yaga. All believed that escape was possible. He will return, said Yara, a manufactorum worker who had been among the first to see John Wick. The legend says he always returns, to finish what was started, to collect what is owed. Legends are just stories, another replied, older, more cynical. The Imperium has crushed every rebellion for 10,000 years. What makes this different? Because this time, we know it can be done. He proved it, defied the Inquisition, killed an Eversor, escaped through a rift between universes. If one man can do all that, imagine what we could do together. We would die, all of us, and accomplish nothing. Perhaps. But at least we would die trying. At least we would die knowing that the Imperium's grip is not absolute. That somewhere, in another universe, people live free. That is worth something. That is worth everything. The group dispersed, returning to their stations, their lives, their endless toil. But something had changed. A seed had been planted, small, fragile, but growing. And in the spires above, Inquisitor Voss read the reports with growing frustration. More incidents, more defiance, more workers refusing to accept their place in the Emperor's design. All of it traced back to one source, the Baba Yaga, the legend of John Wick. He is gone, Master Kaine reminded her. Returned to his universe. He cannot harm us anymore. Can he not? His legend does more damage than his presence ever could. Ideas are more dangerous than bullets, Kine. They spread, they mutate. They cannot be killed with hellguns or bolt rounds. Then we suppress them, purge the believers, erase every record of his existence. We have tried. For 3 months we have tried. And still the legend persists. Still the workers whisper his name. Still they hope. Voss stood at her viewport, looking down at the hive world below. 1 trillion souls, all grinding themselves to dust in service to the Imperium. All accepting their fate because they knew no alternative. Except now they did. Now they knew that somewhere, someone had escaped, had defied the system, had walked away from the Imperium, and lived. I want access to the Administratum's dimensional research, Voss said quietly. Everything they know about rifts between universes, every scrap of data. Inquisitor, that knowledge is sealed, classified beyond even our authority. The Fabricator General himself would have to approve. Then I will go to Mars. We'll petition the Mechanicus. We'll do whatever is necessary. She turned to face Kine, her augmetic eye glowing with determination. Because I am going to find a way to his universe. I am going to hunt him down, and I am going to kill him, permanently, completely, so thoroughly that not even his legend survives. That is ambitious, Inquisitor. That is necessary. The Imperium cannot tolerate what he represents, cannot allow proof that alternatives exist. We have spent 10,000 years building absolute certainty. He threatens to undo all of it with nothing but his existence. Kine understood. The Imperium was not held together by faith alone. It was held together by the conviction that there was no other way, that this hell was the only possible reality. John Wick had proven that false. And that proof, if allowed to spread, could unravel everything. I will assist however I can, Inquisitor. Good, because this is not over. John Wick may think he has escaped, may think he has found peace, but he has not. The Imperium's reach is long, its memory is eternal, and its vengeance is inevitable. She returned to studying the hive below, planning, calculating, preparing for a hunt that would span dimensions. Because some prey was worth pursuing, some threats were worth eliminating, no matter the cost. And John Wick was both. In his house, in his universe, John Wick sat in the darkness and cleaned his pistol, the same ritual he had performed 1,000 times, the same mechanical precision, the same focus, but now he cleaned it with purpose, because he knew the truth, knew that his rest was temporary, knew that the war was not over. It had never been over, would never be over, because that was what he was, what he had always been, a weapon. And weapons were used, whether they wanted to be or not. The golden coin sat on the table beside him, glowing faintly, waiting, offering passage to a hell he had barely escaped, offering a war he could not win, offering purpose in a life that had been defined by violence for too long. Not yet, John said again. But this time, the word sounded like a promise rather than a refusal, because he would return, eventually, not to save anyone, not to lead anyone, but to finish what had been started, to face the Inquisitor one final time, to prove that even the Imperium's absolute certainty could be broken. And when that day came, when he picked up that coin and activated the rift, he would walk into that universe not as a victim, not as prey, not as someone running from his past, but as what he had always been, what he would always be, the Baba Yaga, the boogeyman, the one you sent to kill the fucking boogeyman. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there was only war, where hope had died 10,000 years ago, where an empire of 1,000,000 worlds ground trillions into dust without mercy or remorse, they would learn what that meant. All of them. Years would pass. The resistance would grow. The Imperium would respond with increasing brutality. Billions would die. Entire hive worlds would be subjected to exterminatus. The High Lords would declare the Wick heresy a threat on par with major chaos incursions. And through it all, the legend would persist. The Baba Yaga, the man who walked away, the proof that escape was possible, the symbol that the Imperium's absolute control was a lie. Some said he would return, that he watched from beyond the veil between universes, that when the time was right, when the need was greatest, he would come back and show them how to fight, how to resist, how to survive. Others said he was dead, that the Imperium had killed him in secret, that the legend was propaganda designed to draw out heretics and malcontents so they could be purged more efficiently. But in the underhives, in the manufactorums, in the dark places where hope should not exist but somehow did, they kept waiting, kept believing, kept fighting, because he had shown them it was possible, had proven that one person, with nothing but skill and determination and refusal to accept the unacceptable, could defy the greatest empire humanity had ever known. And if one could do it, then perhaps others could too. Perhaps all of them could. Together. That was the real heresy. Not the belief that John Wick would return, but the belief that they did not need him to, that they could resist on their own, that they were not just resources to be consumed, but people with value, with rights, with futures worth fighting for. It was the most dangerous idea in the galaxy, and John Wick had given it to them, whether he intended to or not, whether he wanted it or not, whether he ever returned or not. The seed had been planted, and in the grim darkness of the far future, even the smallest seed could grow into something that threatened to tear down empires. In his home, in his universe, John Wick finally made his decision. He picked up the golden coin, felt its weight, felt the energy contained within, felt the war waiting on the other side. He had tried to walk away, had tried to find peace, had tried to leave the violence behind. But the violence would not leave him, would keep pulling him back, would keep demanding payment for debts he never agreed to owe. So, he would pay them, one last time, would return to that nightmare universe, would face the Inquisitor, would show the Imperium what happened when you threatened someone who had nothing left to lose, would show them all what the Baba Yaga truly meant. He activated the coin. Reality tore. A rift opened in his living room, swirling with impossible colors. Through it, he could see the underhive, see the workers gathering, see the resistance forming, see the war waiting. John Wick stood, checked his weapons, prepared for what was coming. Then, he stepped through the rift, back into hell, back into war, back into the only thing he had ever truly been good at, killing. And in the Imperium of man, in the underhive of Hive Praxis, in the gathering of workers who had waited so long for this moment, someone saw him, saw the stranger in the black suit, saw the legend made flesh, saw the Baba Yaga returned, and they smiled, because the war had truly begun. And this time, the Imperium would learn what it meant to face an enemy who could not be killed, could not be corrupted, could not be stopped. This time, the Imperium would learn to fear, the way they had made so many others fear for 10,000 years. Balance, justice, vengeance, call it what you will. John Wick called it work, and he was very, very good at his work. The professional met the Imperium. Precision met brutality. Code met chaos. And in the end, one man proved that even in the darkest universe, even against the greatest empire, even when all hope seemed lost, one person could make a difference. One person could light a spark. One person could be the beginning of change, whether they wanted to be or not. John Wick came to Warhammer 40,000 by accident, fought to survive by necessity, escaped by determination, and returned by choice. Not to save them, not to lead them, not to be their hero, but to finish what he started. And in a universe of eternal war, that was the most dangerous thing anyone could do.